In this presentation, I compare and contrast 5 different methods of auditing and draw some conclusions as to their relative merits. There are 5 audit methods that we're going to evaluate: clause-based auditing, department-based auditing, contract-based auditing, process-based auditing, and behavior-based auditing. As auditors, you select a method that fulfills your objectives and matches the information and resources available. You always know what you're attempting to establish relative to your objective, and you determine what you're going to look at, and when you find it, you determine what you're going to look for. That's the basic approach to auditing. The approach we'll take is to first of all examine the method, then identify some assumptions that are made in applying that method, and then evaluate the method. So firstly, clause-based approach to auditing. We have a standard that contains clauses of requirements. Then we select the clause of the standard that we're going to test compliance with. We're going to choose a department in order to test compliance. Then we're going to assess conformity with the requirements by searching questions of each person, revealing evidence of conformity with clauses of the standard, and then producing an audit report. Our objective is to determine the extent to which the QMS conforms to the requirements of the standard, so the report contains conformity and non-conformity against clauses of the standard. The assumptions that we make in conducting a clause-based audit, first of all, is that departments are exclusively responsible for meeting certain clauses. Secondly, that evidence and conformity in one department is indicative conformity in all departments, and then conformity with clauses is evidence of capability, that correcting non-conformity will somehow improve system effectiveness. And another assumption is that people operate from the same causality as nature and machines. In department-based approach to auditing, we select a department within an organization. Then choose a clause of the standard that applies to that department. And then we assess conformity with requirements by asking searching questions in each area, following a trail through each department and revealing evidence of conformity with clauses of the standard. The result is an audit report, but our objective is to determine the extent to which the QMS conforms to the requirements of the standard, and therefore the report will be a report of conformity and non-conformity against clauses of the standard. The assumptions that we make in the departmental approach is that departments are exclusively responsible for meeting certain clauses. Evidence of conformity in one department is indicative of conformity in other departments, and that conformity with clauses is evidence of capability, that correcting non-conformity will improve system effective, and again, an assumption is that people operate from the same causality as nature and machine. Now turning to the contract-based approach. We select random samples of contracts or orders and critical characteristics of specifications, and obtain or produce a flowchart of activities from contract or order to fulfillment. We assess conformity with contracts and clauses by asking searching questions of each stage, following a trail through each process from input to output, revealing evidence of conformity with customer requirements and with clauses of the standard. The report is produced, and the objective of the audit is to determine whether the organization has the ability to consistently provide products that meet customers' requirements, and therefore the audit report will show the degree of conformity with those requirements. The assumption here is that conformity with clauses is evidence of capability, that conformity with ISO 9001 will enable consistent provision of conforming products, that correcting non-conformity will improve system effectiveness, that people operate from the same causality as nature and machine. So what's the problem? People don't operate from the same causality as nature and machines. We think we can design organizations in the same way we design machines, and a management system is not a set of documents. The behavior of nature and machines is based upon its inherent design properties. If you plant an acorn, you get an oak tree. You don't get a horse, chestnut, or a chestnut horse. If people are not distracted, don't prioritize or choose what to do, and they react in a predictable manner, we can treat them as machines. But only zombies behave like this, and who wants to be in a workforce composed entirely of zombies? The management system is the set of interrelated or interacting elements that deliver the organization's outputs, and we can show the relationship between the principal elements in a causal loop diagram. Here, the assumption is that the organization always delivers desired outputs, which always produce satisfied stakeholders. The customers will be satisfied with the products and services. The suppliers will be satisfied with the business arrangements. The employees will be satisfied with the working conditions. The investments or owners will be satisfied with the return on their investment. And society will be satisfied that the organization is creating wealth for their community and not harming it. As outputs are the result of processes, we can consider this organization as a closed system of effectively managed processes. However, in reality, the organization is not a closed system, but an open system, as it's influenced by the external environment in which it operates. If it ignores the business environment or doesn't respond to it effectively, it will have ineffective processes, and these will produce undesirable outputs that will dissatisfy some or all of the stakeholders, maybe not all at once, but over time. This shows the organization is an open system that must adapt to its operating environment to succeed, and therefore cannot be treated as a machine. So a reality check is needed. Conformity is only part of the picture. People make choices. People are influenced by images, events, and their interaction with others. Many invisible risks are hidden in behavior. The impact of behavior is what affects outcomes and capability. So there's two alternative approaches we can use: process management audit or a behavior assessment. Now we'll look at the process-based approach. First of all, we identify the organization's mission, objectives, and success measures, and then identify processes and sub-processes that achieve these objectives. We assess process effectiveness by asking searching questions at each stage, revealing how processes are being managed, revealing evidence of capability against objectives and measures, the result being a report that takes as its input the answers to those questions plus the requirements of the standard. The objective is to determine whether the organization's processes are being managed effectively, and therefore the report will show the effectiveness of the system of processes. Let us look a little more closely at this approach. Having chosen a process to audit, our first question is, what are you trying to do? Followed by, what will success look like? The answer should reveal the objectives and measures for this process. Our next question is, how do you make it happen? The answer should reveal the key stages in the process, the inputs, the outputs, and the resources used to produce them. Our next question is, how do you know you're doing it right? The answer should reveal the degree of process monitoring that is being undertaken, and the review of performance data undertaken to establish how well the process objectives are being achieved. By asking what action was taken the last time performance was reviewed, it should reveal whether process improvement is being undertaken. Our next question is, how do you know you are doing it in the best way? The answer should reveal whether the process review examined whether resources were being utilized efficiently. And once again, by asking what action was taken the last time utilization of resources was reviewed, it should reveal whether improvement in process efficiency is being undertaken. Our final question is, how do you know you are doing the right thing? The answer should reveal whether the process review examined whether the objectives and measures were still relevant to stakeholder needs and whether improvements in process effectiveness were successful. All this should show that the process outputs satisfied the demands. However, even this approach is based upon some assumptions. The system as revealed through systematic inquiry is the system that is producing the results. We're never quite sure that it is. The information presented by the organisation is legitimate and has not been fabricated. Let's now look at the behaviour-based approach, the fifth method of auditing in our series. We identify initially the system objectives and performance drivers. Then we produce a maturity grid, which identifies a range of behaviours as outcomes that reflect levels of maturities and cross-reference the clauses to these behaviours and apply weighting. Therefore, we will use the standard in creating the maturity grid. We identify people from the organisation who experience what is happening in a particular process. Those people are invited to participate in an online survey based upon their part they play in that particular activity. It's 360 degrees because the individual who does the work participates. The people who work in conjunction with those people also answer the questions, and their managers answer the questions. So you get an all-round view of behaviour relative to that particular characteristic. That information is put into a database, and there's an analysis engine run to compute the results. An audit report is produced, where the objective of the whole audit is to measure the inherent level of risk caused by the impact of everyday patterns of behaviour, and therefore the report will show scored risks to the achievement of objectives and drivers. So here we have a particular process, fulfillment process, and this is the results of this analysis. Here we have a series of outcomes that we're looking for, and we take the first one. We know the objective that have to be achieved and how our performance will be measured, and there's a score. That's a computed score, an average score from both the management, the subordinates, and the person doing the job. So they're rating it relative to that. We know the objectives that have to be achieved. How do you rate? Do you always know them? Do you know them all the time, only part of the time? And let's scroll down here to number 8, because we've got a further example on this. When things go wrong, we put them right. Now the average score was 39.3. So when we look at the maturity grid to get the 39.3, we've got an outcome. When things go wrong, we put them right. So the questions that we ask to reveal the maturity are questions like this. When things go wrong, we put them right as best we can and get on with the job. That gets a 0 because that's not the expected behaviour. We normally correct mistakes as they occur following our procedures, but we wouldn't record these. Well, that gets a 1 because they correct their mistakes. Records show that our procedures have been applied to correct mistakes and prevent them from happening again. That's better, so we get a 2 from that, but it's still not good enough. We usually review all mistakes formally in line with our procedures and take effective action to prevent them recurring. That's pretty good, so we get a score of 3 on that. Records of all mistakes show that it is rare for the same mistakes to happen twice. Now that gets a top mark, 5. So there's a score of 5 for getting the top marks. So if we were picking that, when things go wrong, we put them right. Ask that question of the person doing the job. Ask that question of the person who supervises that particular activity. And ask that person who assists those people who are doing the job. And we'll get a range of different answers. So the score is that average. And the clauses out of the standard that link to that is the one on corrective action and the one on control of records. So we're getting a behaviour, pattern of behaviour relative to the degree of maturity which those requirements have been implemented. We can present the results graphically using a radar chart, but in several categories. First of all, by stakeholder. So here we have process owners, workers, suppliers and customers. And this shows a fairly uniform result. In other words, there's quite good alignment between the four. Or by business process, mission management, resource management, demand creation, demand fulfillment. And in this case, we seem to get better alignment on the demand fulfillment than the others. Or we could do it by clause of the standard, and this is the 2008 version of the standard. It's clear on here that clause 7, which is product realization, there's a little bit more alignment than there was on clause 8 on measurement. There are assumptions with this method, just as every other method. The system is revealed through systematic inquiry. We're assuming is the system that is producing the results. We're assuming that the responses are based on facts and not opinions or perceptions. And we're assuming that the statements don't produce widely different interpretations. If we take a big enough sample, we'll be able to see that. And any spurious results will be obvious. So if we evaluate all these methods, look for accuracy. Will this method reveal whether the organization conforms to all requirements where they apply? What about the inherent risks? Will this method reveal whether inherent risks have been identified and are being managed effectively? What about performance? Will this method reveal whether quality objectives are being achieved? On capability, will this method reveal whether the organization has the ability to consistently provide conforming product? Best practice. Will this method reveal whether industry best practices are employed? And fraud. Will this method reveal practices that compromise product quality? And lastly, will this method hold back or stimulate future development of ISO 9001? So looking at the confidence level of each method, using that criteria, we would say that the clause-based method is not for third-party audits, and the department-based audit is not for third-party audits. Contract-based audit is acceptable for second-party audits, and process-based audit is acceptable for third-party audits. Behaviour-based process audits is acceptable when combined with other audit methods. So you do this in conjunction with maybe the process approach to get more confidence in the results. So in conclusion, which methods will hold back or stimulate development of ISO 9001? The clause-based, hold back. Department-based, will that hold it back? I suspect so. Contract-based, it will hold it back. Process-based, maybe stimulate. On the behaviour-based approach, that will stimulate development of ISO 9001. Should you have any questions on the behavioural assessment method, then please contact Ian Rossum at this email address. And if you've got any other questions regarding this presentation or on management system auditing, contact myself at the address stated here. Thank you.